This is Algebra 1, Lesson 4.4, Slope of a Line. Two goals. One of them is finding the slope using 2 points. The other one is interpreting slope as a rate of change. In this class, we're going to use those synonymously of each other. Slope can be considered rate of change, and rate of change can be considered slope, beginning on page 226. First thing is a definition of a slope. The slope M, anytime you see that letter M, it represents slope. I don't know why M represents slope, but one way you can remember that it's slope is you can look at it as if it's two mountain peaks going up the slope or up the side or down the side of a mountain. So think of a mountain which slopes. M is a mountain. Anyway, it's the non-vertical line, so it's not a line that does this. That's going to have no slope. We'll explain why that's no slope in a few minutes. But it's a non-vertical line. It is the number of units the line rises or falls for each unit of horizontal change from left to right. A lot of people consider slope, they use this phrase right here, rise over run. Now, the reason this becomes important and the reason people make mistakes with this is because in an ordered pair, we know it comes alphabetically. X comes before Y. This is what we've been dealing with. That means you either go left or right for X, and you go up or down for Y. Notice how rise over run works. The top number is the rise. That is your Y change. That's how much it's going to go up or down. And the run is your X change. That's how much it's going to go left or right. So it's how much it goes up and down over how much it goes left or right. That's what slope is. The rate of change, again, you could use it synonymously with slope, compares two different quantities that are changing. So most of the time when you're talking about rate of change, it'll be in a real life example type problem where you're looking at two things. Instead of just looking at numbers on a coordinate plane, it'll be talking about like heights of students and weights of students, just going back to the other example that we used previously. So rate of change is talking about when the taller students are, the more they weigh, and so on and so forth. So the first boxes we had to fill in was finding the slope of a line. The slope M of the non-vertical line passing through the points. Now you read this right here. You don't read this as x1, y1. I can't believe how many times I hear that and it drives me insane. Or x2, y2. You read that as x sub 1. Think about like it's sub because it's below it. Y sub 1, X sub 2, Y sub 2. All it's really saying is the X value of point number 1 and the Y value of point number 1. So if you're looking at this one right here, it's whatever this X value is of point number 1 and whatever this Y value is. Now, a lot of people say, well, Coach, you're going to write the slope formula up on the board for us? Yeah, I will, early. I won't late. You can remember the slope formula forever without having to remember X sub 1 or Y sub 1. You don't have to remember none of that. Just remember that it's the change of Y. Now, when you're talking about the change of something, you're talking about how it's different from one point to another. Think about how much you've changed in the last 2 years, for example. If this graph said age down here and, I don't know, maturity on this side, just for an example. Think about how much you have changed. What you would take is your level of maturity now, and you would subtract it by your level of maturity then. That's how you talk about the difference of two things or the change of two things. That means you're subtracting them. So the change of Y over the change of X. Again, the same thing. You would take the age you are now and you would subtract it, since it's the difference of two things, you'd subtract it by the age you were then, and that gives you the slope, the change of Y over the change of X, or Y sub 2 minus Y sub 1 over X sub 2 minus X sub 1. What you have to understand is that the sub 2 points have to be over each other, and the sub 1 points have to be over each other. If that's the case, you'll be in good shape. Okay, here is classifying lines by slope. If the ramp is going up like this, it's going up. Think about yourself driving in a little car, this ugly little car like this, and you're going to go up that ramp, or think yourself walking up the ramp. It's positive. If you're driving in a car, same ugly little car like this, and you're going to go down that thing, it's negative or it's falling. So that's a positive versus a negative slope. Is it rising or is it falling? The other two are the ones that people get confused. Which one is which? This line right here has a slope of 0. Okay? Its slope is 0. There's two different ways to remember that. One of them, and the easiest one for most people when you're looking at pictures of it, is you can write a Z like that. 0. 0. It's just one way to remember the difference. Okay? The reason it's 0 is because when you compare two of the points, it doesn't go up or down at all, going from that one green point to that other one. Its change of y would be 0 over, let's say its change of x, it went over 1. It would be 0 over 1. What does this simplify to? 0 divided by 1. 0. And that's why the slope of that line is 0. Watch why there's an undefined slope on the next one. Watch this one right now. Okay. This one right here is undefined since it's a vertical line. Another way, just like a minute ago, you could write the word 0 on that one. With this one, you could write the word, or you could write an N. You could write no slope with that one. No slope. But the reason why it's no slope, again, if you take this point and this point, and you say it changes, its y value changed 1, it went up 1. How many times did it go left or right? 0. What is anything divided by 0? Okay, in this case, you can't divide something by 0. If you have a calculator, if you punch in 1 divided by 0, it's going to say broken, don't do it anymore. That's what it's going to say. But that's the reason the slope is no slope or it's undefined, because you can't divide something by 0. Here's example number 1. There's A, B, and C for example number 1. We'll have a problem for you to do on your own for each one. It said let x sub 1 and y sub 1 be equal to -2 and -3. So right here, you label them as x, y, x, y. Okay, they're both x, y, x, y. That didn't change. It's still the x before the y. This one right here is going to be sub 1, because that's 0.1. And this one right here is going to be sub 2, because that's 0.2. So now you just plug it into the slope formula. The slope formula says y sub 2, that is this value right here, 2. So in place of that one, we're simply plugging in 2. Minus y sub 1 is this one. Now you have minus a negative. Notice that's what it says. So in place of y sub 1, we're plugging in -3. Over x sub 2, again, x sub 2 is this value here, 1, minus, since it's the difference, x sub 1, which is this one. Again, minus a negative. What happens when you minus a negative? That tells you to do what? Add it, right? Add the opposite, or plus it. So 2 plus 3 over 1 plus 2. So 2 plus 3 is 5 over 1 plus 2 is 3. So the slope of this line, since that's simplified, there's no number that goes into both of those, is 5 over 3. And when you compare this line, it's positive, so the line rises from left to right. If you would have graphed this line, just a quick sketch, but if you would have graphed this line, it'll look like this, since it's going uphill like a ramp going uphill. Okay, find the slope of this line. Here is your slope formula. M equals y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Start off by labeling it to where you know where to put it, and then take about 30 seconds to simplify what the slope is. Take about 30 seconds. Okay, we have y sub 2 minus y sub 1. First thing you want to do is on top of it, write x, y, x, y. Notice there's no distinction in the x's yet. When you say that this is point number 1, now that's sub 1 for both of those. When you say that this one over here is point number 2, now that's sub 2 for both of those. So now just plug in the value of each point that it asked for. So the first one asked for y sub 2. That's this value, 6. The formula says minus since it's talking about the difference. So before we even look at y sub 1, we have minus in there. Y sub 1's value is the next one. That's this one here, 0. Over x sub 2. X sub 2 is the next one. That's this one here, negative 1. Again, minus is what the formula calls for. Then x sub 1 is the last one. That's this one here, negative 3. I'm going to write it in a different color where it shows up. Negative 3. Remember, anytime you have minus a negative 3, that makes it change. That changes it to plus a positive. So 6 minus 0, when you just simplify straight across, 6 minus 0 is 6. And negative 1 plus 3, think of it this way. Negative 1 plus 1, 2, 3 is going to be 2. That says 6 divided by 2, which we know to simplify, the slope is going to be 3. So that's a positive number. That slope is going to rise. That ramp's going to go up 3. B says let x sub 1, y sub 1 be equal to negative 2, negative 3. And this is just going back up to the top of example number 1. And let x sub 2, y sub 2 be 4, negative 3. Again, here's your slope formula. So it asks you for y sub 2 first. That is this one, y sub 2. So you're going to say negative 3 minus, the next one is y sub 1. That's this one. Negative 3 minus negative 3. Notice that says minus a negative. Ultimately, that's going to be plus a positive. Okay. The other part says x sub 2. That's this one. X sub 2, 4, minus x sub 1 is the last one. That's this one, x sub 1. So 4 minus a negative 2. Again, minus a negative is going to become plus a positive. Negative 3 plus 3, we know is going to give us the number 0. And 4 plus 2 is 6. 0 divided by anything is the number 0. Therefore, the slope of the line is 0. Again, think of it this way if you have to. The line's going like this. It's horizontal. You can write the word 0. You can write a Z on that one. Okay, find this slope. Again, here's your slope formula. The change of y over the change of x. Take 30 seconds on that one. xy, xy, sub 1, sub 2. Plug them in their corresponding spots. Y sub 2 is the first one it asked for. That's this one. Negative 3 minus. Y sub 1 is this one. A negative 3 minus a negative 3. You don't even have to draw in the parentheses. You know that means plus a positive. So at the top of the fraction, it's going to be 0 over. X sub 2 is next. X sub 2 is 5. Minus x sub 1 is negative 1. Minus a negative 1, again, is plus a positive. 5 plus 1 is 6. We have 0 over 6. Again, the slope 0 divided by anything is going to be 0. That's going to be a horizontal line, just like the example before it. And then C says let x sub 1, y sub 1 be equal to negative 1, negative 4. And x sub 2, y sub 2 be equal to negative 1, negative 2. So here's your slope formula again, the change of y over the change of x. And then plug in the corresponding spots. Y sub 2 is first, this one, negative 2. Minus y sub 1 is next, negative 4. Negative 2 minus a negative 4. Remember that we know that that's going to be plus. So negative 2 plus 4 is going to be positive 2 at the top of that. Over x sub 2 is on the bottom. Negative 1 is first. Minus x sub 1 minus a negative means plus a positive. Negative 1 plus 1 we know is going to be 0. So we have right now is 2 over 0. Remember, nothing can be written over 0 in a fraction. That's why this is an undefined or something that you would consider to have no slope. No slope is a vertical line, a line that looks like this, one going up and down. Because you can write an N with that one and make it say no slope. Okay, take 30 more seconds to do this one. Here's your slope formula. M equals the change of y over the change of x. xy, xy, sub 1, sub 2. First one it asks for is y sub 2, negative 3, minus. Next one it asks for is y sub 1, 1, over. First one it asks for at the bottom is x sub 2, 1, minus x sub 1, negative 2, minus a negative. We know what that means. It means plus a positive. So negative 3 minus 1, think of the number line. You're at negative 3 and you're going minus 1. One more to the left is going to give you negative 4 on the top. 1 plus 2 is going to give you 3. There's no number that goes into both of these. So your slope is negative 4 over 3. That's a negative slope. If you were to graph that line, it would be doing something like this. It would be falling that way. Since it's a negative slope, it's a ramp going downhill. Negative 4 over 3. Then you had a couple checkpoint problems. Find the slope of these lines for 4 of them. In fact, remember x, y, sub 1, sub 2. The slope formula says y sub 2, that's negative 1 in this case, minus y sub 1 is 2 in this case, over x sub 2, that's 4 in this case, minus x sub 1 is negative 5. Minus the negative, we know, means plus a positive. Negative 1 minus 2 is going to be negative 3 on top. 4 plus 5 on top is going to be 9. You can't leave it like this. Only because the number 3 goes into both of these. You need to reduce it, just like we've been doing all year. Negative 3 goes into itself 1 time, and it goes into 9 3 times. So your slope simplified is negative 1 over 3. If you leave it as negative 3 over 9, you're going to get it wrong. Okay. This is the same thing. xy, sub 1, sub 2. Slope formula says y sub 2 is first, 2, minus y sub 1 is 2, over. X sub 2 is 9, minus x sub 1 is 6. 2 minus 2 is going to be 0 on top. 9 minus 6 is going to be 3. 0 divided by anything. The slope of this one is 0. That'll be a horizontal line. The first one is a negative slope. That means the ramp's going downhill, something like that. This one's horizontal. It's going something like this. Number 3, again, you want to label it to where you can see it. X comma y, sub 1 for the first one, sub 2 for the second one. Y sub 2 is first, 8, minus y sub 1 is next, 0, over. X sub 2, negative 7, minus x sub 1, negative 7. Minus the negative, we know, means to plus a positive. 8 minus 0 is 8. Negative 7 plus 7 is going to be 0. You can't have this. You can't have a 0 at the bottom of a fraction. That's no-no. So the slope of this one is undefined. Undefined, or you can write no slope for this one. Or we learned this shorthand. We could say that's the slope, a null set. But that's going to be a slope, a line when you graph it. It's going to be a vertical line going straight up and down. And then the last one, x comma y. This is x comma y, sub 1, since that's point number 1, sub 2, that's point number 2. Y sub 2 is first in your slope formula, 6, minus y sub 1 is negative 4, minus a negative. We know what that means. Over, x sub 2 is 8, minus x sub 1 is 2, minus a negative means plus a positive. 6 plus 4 is 10. 8 minus 2 is going to be 6. You can't leave that one like that either because the number 2 goes into both of them. It goes into this one M's value is going to be 5 over, it goes into this one 3 times. Your slope for that one is 5 over 3. So if you were to graph that line, it'll be a positive ramp going uphill, 5 over 3.